Hi, I'm J. Elizabeth Clark, professor of English at LaGuardia Community College.
And I'm Leigh Garrison-Fletcher, and I'm a professor in the Education and Language Acquisition Department at LaGuardia Community College.
Welcome, Lee. I'm so glad that you could be here today. Um,
Yes, thanks for having me.
Lee and I are going to be talking about high impact practices. So, Lee, can you start off by telling us a little bit about your experience with high impact practices and a little bit about how you came to this work?
Yes. So, actually, my second year as a LaGuardia faculty member, I participated in a workshop to prepare to teach the first year seminar. And so that was my introduction to high impact practices. Um, And it's shaped a lot of what I've done throughout my time at LaGuardia, actually, because I was a very junior faculty when I did it. Um, so my focus really on high impact practices is first year seminar, and then from there I also started teaching in learning communities. So those are the two high impact practices I've kind of engaged with the most at LaGuardia.
That's great. And how would you define high impact practices as you think about your work, both in first year and also in learning communities?
Yeah, I think high impact practices are things that work for students, things that best serve student needs in the classrooms.
We are really centered on that student centered, student effective pedagogy.
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. So, you're using HIPS in two different contexts. So, feel free to use either or both. Can you let us know what does it look like in action for you? How are you using HIPS and what does that mean in your classroom?
So actually they're actually very closely tied because all the learning communities I've taught have had I've also been teaching in the learning community a first year experience
Okay.
FYS class. Um, so but what so the question is what does it look like in
What does
practice?
it look like in practice? So,
Yeah.
I'm a student in your class. How am I experiencing high impact practice?
Um, so engaged and inclusive pedagogy, I think, are key. So I kind of make sure that make students feel welcome and kind of guide them. And like my approach to pedagogy is very much like I facilitate, like the whole stage on the stage thing uh, is not is not a high impact practice in my opinion. Um,
Yeah, probably not. I think that everyone everywhere would agree with that.
yeah. Um, and uh, yeah, I think just being myself with students, being vulnerable with students, um, kind of like being on a journey with them and facilitating them on their journey and helping them like self advocate and reflect on their goals. What does it mean for them to be successful? What do they want to achieve by taking certain classes, by getting a certain degree? Um, yeah, so they can make meaning
So,
out of what
yeah,
they're
that's so interesting. I talked with Tamika Battle earlier today, and it's
doing.
very interesting. She was also talking about first year, and she used some of the same language. She talked about vulnerability and authenticity and how important it is to bring that to the classroom. And I think it's really
Mhm.
interesting. Like the two of you did not coordinate that answer, and it just emerged as such an important part of how you're coming into the class to work with these students.
Yeah, and I feel like I was actually looking at earlier, I was looking at the list of high impact practices, and I feel like um, something they have in common that I thought about, or a lot of them at LaGuardia, is that there's a lot of professional development and discussion of pedagogy that leads to implementing those high impact practices. So like writing intensive, you have to take WID. To teach the first year seminar, you have to go through a professional development. The learning communities, when you're in that, you're in a whole group who's all doing learning community sharing strategies. So I think, yeah, I was just thinking about that earlier, how a lot of these like are really engaged faculty to think about what they're doing in the classroom. And I think that's a big reason they're so impactful.
Yes, and involve them in a community of
Yes.
like-minded people who want to be doing this work. And I think that faculty community is also an important part of that work because we're supporting one another, giving feedback to one another, and talking about those both the goals, but also some of the issues that crop up in those
Yeah,
different situations.
definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you said that when you started out, right? You started out as a junior faculty member in the seminar, but
Hmm.
this is really hard work, right? Like doing high impact practices is hard work. It's a big commitment. Some of our colleagues might say it's extra work. Some of us might say it's just like it's the work. But I don't think anybody would deny that it takes a lot of intentionality. So what motivated you to continue after that first experience? Why did you want to keep doing this kind of work?
So I think after the first experience, I really felt part of the community of LaGuardia instructors. It's where I first met a bunch of people outside my department. Um, and I saw it actually made things easier for me in the classroom. So, like, when I went to the class and I had, you know, talked to other faculty about, like, okay, what should we be doing in this class? And, like, kind of had a shared background about the goals, it was so much easier to teach the course than a course that I was like, okay, more doing just on my own, not really talking to other people about, like, okay, what do you think works best? What order should we do these things in? And like plan the syllabus together. And um, so, and then uh, yeah, it just made me also more confident, I think, in the classroom. Um, and it allowed me to, I think, definitely better connect with students. And I really do think, you know, I mean, the research speaks for itself that these do have a positive impact on students, but to see it firsthand and, like, then you don't have to be like, I feel like sometimes with preparing to teach, or while you're teaching, some of the hardest work, at least for me, is when things are not working well.
Yeah.
And like, what am I going to do? Or do I need to chase all these students down because none of them are doing anything? Or like, and I think with high impact practices, that doesn't happen so much. So, um, yeah, I wouldn't really say it's extra work. I think it makes the work better and in some ways easier. I mean, there's a lot that goes into it for sure, a lot of time, a lot of commitment. Um, but it's worth it when your students are successful. If you care, I guess, if you care about your students being successful, which hopefully all instructors do care about that, um, then I think it's well worth it, and it makes it easier a little bit.
That totally, I agree. I mean, I love when I'm having that shared experience with my colleagues and we're really building something together. And definitely learning communities, ePortfolio, many of our high impact practices at LaGuardia are places where we have all found community of like-minded people doing this work. So yeah, I couldn't agree more.
Mhm.
Um, would you give us an example of an assignment from first year experience that you think works really well?
Yes. Where to start? No, I'm just joking. So
That's kind of the question of the whole course, right? Where to
yeah.
start? Where are we starting you off, and how is it going to start you
Uh,
on your pathway?
so most recently, I teach the first year seminar for education majors. Before that, I taught LIF, which is first year seminar for liberal arts, social science, and humanities. But I'm going to go with my education first year seminar. An assignment that I think it works really well is for them to reflect on their past educational experiences,
Yeah.
and how those have affected their decision to want to become an educator, or what kind of educator they would strive to be based on that. When they do this, and first I share mine, and then we all share, they actually post on ePortfolio about their educational experiences. And we always have a really great conversation in the class. about the importance of education, the importance of good teachers, kind of what happens when you have a teacher who doesn't believe in you. Um, so yeah, I think that's one of the best assignments. And it's towards the beginning of the semester, and it's like after we've kind of gotten to know each other, but I think it really, after that point, like we're a really strong community. Um,
Love that. And I love the way that it is also immediately building in reflection as an important component of what they're doing, that
yeah,
they're there to definitely learn and grow new things and new knowledge and new skills, but also to reflect on what they're taking in and how it relates to previous experiences.
yeah, and it's definitely career connected learning.
Yeah.
Definitely helps them focus on that and have a bigger picture of like why is your major education and like what do you plan to do with that and yeah, so it's great.
That's great. So I know that for the better part of this year, you've also been looking at first year experience and thinking about first year experience, not just your own personal experience, but also kind of program wide.
Mhm.
Are there any outcomes that you're finding that are particularly effective or things that you're thinking about in terms of the way first year experience operates at LaGuardia?
Yeah, so it's amazing. The data are like so positive. And for, I think this is its 11th year. So I think in about 2018, there was a study that was done for the first part. An outside observer came and looked at the impact of the first year seminar and found a huge impact on like retention and graduation and GPA, credit attainment, things like that. Um, and it's still going strong. So we still see those
So
same,
exciting.
yeah, we still see all that. I mean, I'm actually doing kind of a follow-up study looking at also part-time students because all the data is just on full-time students. So hopefully we'll find the same for part-time students because we have a lot of part-time students. But yeah, it's a wonderful program at LaGuardia, and yeah, it's been wonderful to work and learn more about it. There's 16 different first year seminar classes for different majors. One challenge is that some of them are zero credit courses. So we've actually talked about here. I'm going to bring in learning communities. Um, we've talked about how it could really strengthen the experience of the faculty and the students if they could teach the first year seminar along with the content course. Because for the past few years, I've been teaching the first year seminar in education along with introduction to language, intro to linguistics course. And it's been just amazing to have those two high impact practices kind of merged together. Um, Really lets me even have a deeper connection with the students. And yeah,
Yeah,
so
I think that's really interesting. That's something that's come out in a lot of these conversations that a lot of us started with one hip, right? And we started maybe small and really learning that hip well and intentionally designing how, what that looked like in our classroom or our co-curricular work. But a thing that has happened is that many of these seem to be even more effective when they're in dialogue with one another, right? So like first year seminar and ePortfolio,
yeah, I was about to
you
say
know,
that
learning
those are
how
also
to,
definitely
yeah.
taken. Yeah.
Yeah, so I think it's really interesting the way that people who become engaged in this work as they grow in their intentionality around this work often find that they're bringing in other high impact practices so that you kind of have this hip intersection
Mhm.
happening where students aren't just experiencing one, but maybe one or two or three in the same course.
Yeah. Yeah. And just to brag about the education program for a minute, which I'm just a faculty member of. Yeah, I think it's done a great job of implementing a lot of the high impact practices. It's one of the programs that has ePortfolio really scaffolded throughout the whole thing. And so, yeah, I didn't really mention ePortfolio, but definitely the first year seminar relies heavily on ePortfolio. And so I also engage with ePortfolio. To be honest, I did a lot more pre-pandemic and kind of have dropped my ePortfolio stuff a little bit since, but
Us are finding our way back to
yes,
practices
exactly.
old and adding practices new in the post-COVID era. And again, something that has come up in many of my interviews where people are talking about what they did before the pandemic, how the pandemic affected their teaching, and where they are now. And I think that's an important part of the conversation that our classrooms were irrevocably changed
Yeah.
by the COVID-19 pandemic.
Mhm. Definitely. Yeah, I was like building up a lot of momentum with my ePortfolios, using them in all my different classes, and then I've I've dropped that. But
Yeah, then maybe you'll come back to it, or
yeah,
maybe you will stick with other hips and the journey is long.
yes,
The educational journey of teaching is very long. Um,
yes.
so we'll see where we end up. But thank you so much for talking with me about first year experience and learning communities and some of the research that you're doing.
Mhm.
As we wrap up, any last thoughts on hips?
Um, I invite any faculty who's interested to reach out to us. You can start small. I really do think it makes your job easier. Um, and it's a wonderful community of people who are who are doing this work. Um, so
That's great. Thank you so much. And thanks for spending this time with me and letting us see a little peek inside your work.
mhm. Thank you.